doesn't have an announcer delivery, but also remember they had Olivier doing some color on that show too that first week. And he was just so rotten and lifeless and tasteless and bland. But now that you hear Jericho, he's the only choice. And it helps get heat on Le Champion. His whole inner circle group is not going to be there, doing beatdowns on weekly empty arena television. So, well, I guess they've taped a lot of stuff already, but I love the atmosphere, the look of the building, the atmosphere with, once again, all the wrestling school students are there, or the private invitation, but they've got some people cheering and yelling. And, preventing gatherings of more than 10 people, to me, is fine if you're talking about in a public place. But when 10 people or more decide to go into a private facility, not fucking have a goddamn picnic, but because they're doing a national television show and it's closed to the public, I don't really see how you can say much. So they've got the atmosphere. They had the commentary team. They had very little put in front of it. Lance Archer, why couldn't instead of the second verse being same as the first, the second verse is actually what they should have done the first time. And that promo by Jake was the closest thing, as you would expect from Jake, to a reasonable explanation of why that Lance Archer even took a match with Marco Stunt, because nobody else wanted it. At least you thought you could make a name for yourself. That at least somewhat, but it doesn't explain what they let Marco Stunt do in that match. But this was an actual goddamn squash match that the Murder Hawk should beat some fucking nobody in a minute or two just to show his goddamn vicious moves. This is not breaking new ground here.
And I thought it was probably as good as you could have done. You couldn't have Jake with him. Apparently Jake is self-quarantined right now in a hotel room, which wouldn't be the first time. And Jake's like, quarantined in a hotel room. But,
no, in Smoky Mountain, when I called it the first night that he no-showed in Knoxville, we didn't know he was going to no-show until then. After that, we had a sneaking suspicion the next night and the next night. But after that night in Knoxville, I get home. I call his home number to see if I can find him and find out if he's coming. And the answer machine picks up, and it's a fucking entire chorus of "I have become comfortably numb." Beep.
Well, Jake, in quarantine, like I said, lots of experience doing that, but couldn't have him there. Best promo he's done because it was the one that got him over the least, and more about his charge.
Well, and we said this. I'm agreeing with you here. We said this on the drive-through this past week. It was the difference between a Heyman promo about Brock and a Jake promo about Archer is that Jake hadn't been talking that much about Archer, but this one maybe he's listening. The rest of them listen. They don't. Do they get your program in Cleveland? Well, they hear it, but I don't know whether they get it. They don't listen all the time, but they hear it. But he built it talking about how bad Archer was, so that was rectified.
The one big problem I had, it really has nothing to do with the match. Fine for what it was. It was a squash match. You're getting Archer over as a killer. Let's see what they do with that. But later on in the show, during the Brody Lee match, Marco Stunt is at ringside with the other wrestling student fans, and it's like, this guy got destroyed last week by this giant. He should be off TV this week. He's hurt. He can't be there. He got destroyed.
There was a time I got so mad at Bubba Ray Dudley, and he got so mad at me in 2005 in OVW because they had come down to get back. He and Devon, as the Dudleys, come back down to get in shape for a few weeks before they were going to go back and do something. Somebody had been hurt, whatever. And he says, the fucking Who the Heels, Tank Toland and his gimmick brother Chad, I think it was, and they were managed by Jillian Hall. And they were going to work with the guys in a dark match, it was a TV match, whatever the fuck. It was a match at the Davis Arena. And they said, well, we'll put your guys over because, we're just part-time. Oh, that'd be great. Well, then just figure out the finish, whatever you want to do. You're going to put them over and just, then send the people home happy like I think they had done the week before when they bumped the heels out of the ring or whatever. So I didn't think anything more about it, and I go out there and watch the last match of the night, and their way to send the people home happy was they set up a table in the ring, and they took Jillian Hall and powerbombed her off the top rope through the fucking table in the middle of the ring. In front of a 120-pound girl, in front of all of the TV fans, 500 people, fucking jam-packed Davis Arena that come every fucking week. And I had figured she was going to be doing something with them the following few weeks on television. But what the fuck? It couldn't happen. She can't come back next week walking properly. So I had to take her off everything for 3 weeks to have her cell being powerbombed off the top rope through a table by a 280-pound fucking man. And Bubba couldn't figure out why in the world I'd bother to do that and why I was mad at him. Because he'd worked for Paul Lee all that fucking time at that point. So nothing meant anything. Now he probably figured it out. But anyway, yeah, Marco Stunt's walking around. Well, why wouldn't he? Because it's all phony. You made me watch it. I didn't want to do it. Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida. You just tipped me off. You said you thought this was Britt Baker's best bout ever on AEW television. I agree. The best part of the match was the second half, and the second half was the best match she's had in All Elite Wrestling. I will say that. What did you like about it so much?
Well, first of all, this was the first match where I thought, even though Archer opened up the show, where Shivani and Jericho really started hitting their pace. And Jericho, early on in the match, because I've not been a fan of the AEW women's division, as everyone knows. And usually that's when I will leave the room. Britt Baker, as a personality, has me intrigued. I've really enjoyed her becoming a heel character. I think she's a natural now as a heel. And I was willing to give it a shot. And then I think once she got the bloody nose, it was like everything got ramped up. All of a sudden, I was like, holy shit, what's going on here? And then I really started to like the match from there. But I like Britt Baker as a heel. I think I know you thought early on she's a natural to be the top babyface in the women's division, but
yeah,
I really like her as a heel. I think she's really good in this role.
She's doing great as a heel. And I will read you my notes, by the way, because it's scary, you and I. My notes are at the start, average awkward girls match was the first thing I wrote down. But I said, Jericho makes it worthwhile watching this.
Yeah.
But then Britt Baker takes over, starts getting the heat, and she's doing the great heel shit to the camera, the facials and blah, blah, blah. I didn't understand why the fans got to help Shida in front of the referee. But anyway, they go to the break. The first half of the match wasn't nothing to write home about, in my opinion. But in the next segment, things had picked up. And Britt Baker's working, they're both working hard, and Baker's fucking working on her, and then they go back and forth. But then the tater was on the enziguri. Did you notice that?
No, I couldn't figure out. I didn't go back and watch it a second time, but I couldn't figure out what actually busted her nose. No.
The tater was on the enziguri because, as I tried to see it, Shida was going to come up and do the step-up enziguri. Britt Baker was ready she was going to put her left arm up, as they do these days, now that the enziguri has become such a constant thing. She's going to put her left arm up kind of in front of her head to kind of cushion in case, the fucking foot comes for the face. But it was her raising the arm and Shida coming up, and Shida was not exactly getting air like Michael Jordan on this thing. Shida's enziguri leg some way kicked Britt Baker's arm, and either Shida's knee or Britt's arm was propelled, forearm bone into her nose, something. It all got flummoxed up right there. So if anybody wants to go back and watch that, just watch that attempt at a walking into a step-up enziguri, and you'll see what the fuck happened. It wasn't obvious, but, that's why they pay me for this shit. Well, they don't pay me, but they should be. Anyway. The point is, then Britt's milking the fucking blood, and they go back and forth, and they're really laying it in. Here's another match anybody can go back and watch and then look at with different eyes, if you have a mind to. Ring of Honor WrestleMania weekend in 2012. double night stand in Fort Lauderdale, Florida that was supposed to air on pay-per-view both nights and didn't air either fucking time because of Go Fight Live. But nevertheless, one of the main events was one of the most talked about matches amongst the smart fans and the, internet contention and etc. Michael Elgin and Davey Richards for the ROH title. And that's where people started saying, well, Elgin should be the champion. Elgin should be the champion. And they waited too long to put the belt on Elgin. Well, one of the reasons is because he didn't have any fucking papers to work in this country, is because he's Canadian. We've talked about that before. But anyway, this match was given 5 stars, I think, in the Observer. This match lit up the fucking internet. This is the goddamn greatest match that has ever been held. And if you go back and look at it now that I'm going to tell you this, you will find out that half of it was one of the greatest matches ever held. Because it was one of those, the first 10 minutes was honestly, and I was a fan of both these guys' work, but was honestly indie level, back and forth stuff, moves, not a lot of emotion from the two guys who are, both kind of dry. And it was kind of bleh. And all of a sudden, Davey, I think it was, goes to suplex Elgin off the top turnbuckle somehow or whatever the fuck. And when he does, he threw him all the way in the middle of the ring, and Elgin almost landed on his head and almost broke his fucking neck. And he pops up, and you can see he's kind of like, oh, fuck, that was close. And when you get that, oh, fuck, that was close, your adrenaline fucking comes up, and Elgin starts coming back at Davey, and now Davey's getting into it, and it woke the people up who had been kind of, because the atmosphere had been kind of blah, because they'd seen a lot of shit. But that thing woke the people up. Then the guys hear the people into it. It feeds on itself. And the point is, from that spot on in the match, with halfway or whatever it was, those guys tore the fucking house down. And and not only were the people into it, but they did good shit that the people should have been into. It was a tale of 2 matches. Sometimes when that fucking wake-up call, there was another time in Ring of Honor when Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly were working their deal where they had split up as being the proteges of Edwards and Richards. And Adam Cole got kicked in the face. It was at the Hammerstein in New York, and just split his lip from wide open, and blood was spurting. And that woke the people up, and it woke Adam up, and he and Kyle started fucking laying them in trading. And all of us, it was like a goddamn Rocky movie. It was like the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum came to New York. And that's one of the things that got Adam Cole over early in Ring of Honor, was that fight. So anyway, so Britt's milking the blood from the nose, and they're going back and forth. They did that awkward spot on the turnbuckle where it takes so long for both people have to obviously not be trying to get out of a predicament to set it up and everything, but boom, they do that, and then Sheeta hits the fucking knee, 1, 2, 3, and I wrote, what the fuck? What the actual fuck? What did you think of who won the match after that?
I would have put Britt Baker over because I think she is showing more with her heel personality than any of the women are showing in the ring as wrestlers, to the point where the personality means more than the work rate or anything else. I think she's been a complete star since they turned her heel. And, especially considering the blood and everything, I thought she was going to go over once that happened.
But here's the thing. It was a fuck up. They didn't know she was going to fucking...
Oh, I know. I guess I expected an audible, but asking for too much.
That's what I was going to say. There should have been an audible. Because here's the thing, is as the next match proves, and I'll point out exactly when it was, the thing was edited. But at the very least, here's my problem, that once the blood happened and she started really fucking milking it, that nobody just went over and just whispered at the goddamn referee. I mean, it's not like that, there's no fans there. You're not going to see it. Tell her to fucking pin her with her feet on the ropes. Because here, once again, maybe I'm just too smart and I'm being too complicated by expecting people to pay attention. Or expecting people not to call me on the phone when I'm in the middle of this. I don't know who that is. And there you go. They're done.
Bye-bye.
All right. But the point is that somebody wouldn't have leaned in and just said, have her pin her with her feet on the ropes. Because here's what they did. They brought her in as a babyface. And they talked about her being a doctor, and she's a role model, and she went to school, and blah, blah, blah. And every time she got in the ring, they beat her. They beat her with fucking Japanese schoolgirls. So then she's finally not in a top position because she's not been portrayed as anything more than she's a fucking, apparently the fans were supposed to think, okay,